General Audience Number 8, November 7th, 1979. Part 3, The Meaning of Original Unity. The unity of the two. The words of Genesis, "It is not good that the man should be alone," are a prelude, as it were, to the account of the creation of woman. Together with this account, the meaning of original solitude enters and becomes part of the meaning of original unity, the key point of which seems to be precisely the words of Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, to which Christ appeals in his dialogue with the Pharisees. "A man will leave his father and his mother and unite with his wife, and the two will be one flesh," from Matthew chapter 19, verse 5. If Christ quotes these words when he appeals to the beginning, we should clarify the meaning of this original unity, which is rooted in the fact of the creation of man as male and female. The account of Genesis 1 does not mention the problem of man's original solitude. In fact, man is male and female from the beginning. The Yahweh's text of Genesis chapter 2, by contrast, authorizes us in some way to think first only about man, inasmuch as through the body he belongs to the visible world while going beyond it. It then lets us think about the same man, but through the duality of sex. Bodiliness and sexuality are not simply identical, although in its normal constitution the human body carries within itself the signs of sex, and is by its nature male or female. The fact that man is a body belongs more deeply to the structure of the personal subject than the fact that in his somatic constitution he is also male or female. For this reason, the meaning of original solitude, which can be referred simply to man, is substantially prior to the meaning of original unity. The latter is based on masculinity and femininity, which are, as it were, two different incarnations. That is, two ways in which the same human being, created in the image of God, is a body. Following the Yahweh's text, in which the creation of woman is described separately from Genesis chapter 2, verses 21 and 22, we should have before our eyes at the same time that image of God of the first creation of count. In its language and style, the second account keeps all the characteristics of the Yahweh's text. The way of narrating fits with the way of thinking of the epic to which the text belongs. Following contemporary philosophy of religion and of language, one can say that we are dealing with a mythical language. In this case, in fact, the term myth does not refer to fictitious, fabulous content, but simply to an archaic way of expressing a deeper content. Without any difficulty, we discover that content under the stratum of the ancient narrative, truly marvelous in the quality and condensation of the truths contained there. Let us add that the second account of the creation of man maintains to some degree the form of a dialogue between man and God the Creator. And this is evident above all in the stage in which the man, Adam, is definitively created as male and female, Is and Isa. Creation takes place simultaneously, as it were, in two dimensions. The action of God, Yahweh, who creates, unfolds in correlation with the process of human consciousness. Thus, God Yahweh says, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I want to make him a help, similar to himself." Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. And at the same time, the man confirms his own solitude from Genesis chapter 2, verse 20. Next we read, "So the Lord God caused torpor," or state of unconsciousness, "to fall upon the man, who fell asleep. Then he took one of his ribs and closed the flesh again in its place. With the rib that the Lord God had taken from the man, he formed a woman." Genesis chapter 2, verses 21 and 22. Considering the specificity of the language, one must first recognize that this Genesis torpor, in which by the work of God, Yahweh God, the man is immersed in preparation for the new creative act, stimulates much thought. Against the background of contemporary mentality, which is accustomed, by an analysis of the subconscious, to link sexual contents with the world of dreams, that torpor may evoke a particular association. The biblical account, however, seems to go beyond the dimension of the human subconscious. If one then supposes that a certain diversity of vocabulary is significant, one can conclude that man, Adam, falls into this torpor in order to wake up as male, Is, and female, Isa. In fact, it is here in Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, that we come across the distinction between Is and Isa for the first time. Perhaps, therefore, the analogy of sleep indicates here not so much a passage from consciousness to the subconscious, but a specific return to non-being. Sleep has within itself a component of the annihilation of man's conscious existence, or to the moment before creation, in order that the solitary man may, by God's creative initiative, reemerge from that moment in his double unity as male and female. In any case, in the light of the context of Genesis chapter 2, verses 18 through 20, there is no doubt that man falls into this torpor with the desire of finding a being similar to himself. If by analogy with sleep we can speak here also of dream, we must say that this biblical archetype allows us to suppose as the content of this dream a second eye, which is also personal and equally related to the situation of original solitude. That is, to that whole process of establishing human identity in relation to all living beings, animalia, inasmuch as it is a process of man's differentiation from such surroundings. In this way, the circle of the human person's solitude is broken because the first man reawakens from his sleep as male and female. Dimensions of homogeneity. The woman is made with the rib that God Yahweh had taken from the man. Considering the archaic, metaphorical, and figurative way of expressing the thought, we can establish that what is meant is the homogeneity of the whole being of both. This homogeneity regards above all the body, the somatic structure, and it is also confirmed by the man's first words to the woman just created. This time she is flesh from my flesh and bone from my bones. Genesis chapter 2, verse 23. Nevertheless, the words quoted also refer to the humanity of the male human being. They should be read in the context of the statements made before the creation of the woman, in which, through the incarnation of man, does not yet exist. She is defined as help similar to himself. See Genesis chapter 2, verse 18 and verse 20. Thus, the woman is created in a certain sense based on the same humanity. Despite the diversity and constitution tied to the sexual difference, somatic homogeneity is so evident that the man, on waking up from Genesis sleep, expresses it immediately when he says, "This time she is flesh from my flesh and bone from my bones. She will be called woman because from man she has been taken." Genesis chapter 2, verse 23. In this way, for the first time, the man, male, shows joy and even exaltation, for which he had no reason before, due to the lack of a being similar to himself. Joy for the other human being, for the second eye, dominates, in the words of man, male, speaks on seeing the woman, female. All this helps to establish the full meaning of original unity. The words here are few, but each has great weight. We must therefore take into account, and will do so later, the fact that that first woman, formed with the rib taken from the man, is immediately accepted as a help suited to him. To this same subject, that is, to the meaning of the original unity of the man and the woman in humanity, we will return in the next meditation.